Good evening, buenas noches, and thank you for tuning in. On behalf of Mitchell Kaplan, Miami Book Fair, and all of us at Books and Books in Miami, Florida, it's my pleasure to welcome you to a virtual evening with the great Carl Hiaasen to celebrate the paperback release of Squeeze Me, published by our friends at Vintage Books. Carl Hiaasen was born and raised in Florida. He's the author of 14 previous novels, including the bestsellers Bad Monkey, Lucky You, Nature Girl, Razor Girl, Sick Puppy, Skinny Dip, and Star Island, as well as 6 best-selling children's books, Hoot, Flush, Scat, Chomp, Skink, and Squirm. And we've sold every single one of them at Books and Books. To moderate tonight's conversation, we're joined by the one and only Dave Barry. Dave is the author of more bestsellers than you can count on 2 hands, including Lessons from Lucy, Dave Barry's Complete Guide to Guys, Dave Barry Turns 40, and Dave Barry is not making this up. A wildly popular syndicated columnist, best known for his booger jokes, Dave won the 1988 Pulitzer Prize for commentary. We love them both. They've been staunch supporters throughout the years, and we're delighted to have them with us this evening. Just remember that throughout the evening's broadcast, you're invited to ask questions by using the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of the screen, and Mitchell Kaplan's going to be with us to take some of those questions from the audience. You can order your copy of Squeeze Me or any other of Carl's or Dave's books from Books and Books below by pressing the green button, and we really appreciate each and every order and the generous donations from viewers everywhere. And now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guests to the virtual stage. Hi, Carl.
Hey, Christina.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Christina. Hey, Carl.
Hey, Dave. Long time.
Yeah, I know. It feels weird being the moderator. I don't usually think of myself as moderating anything, but I want to get to your book, your incredible book, Squeeze Me. But before I do, I want to ask you a little about yourselves, because you have, since the hardcover came out, and we talked about that, you have retired. And
from the column, I've retired, not from writing the books. I've been on, too many years to count, but I think I've been with the paper almost 45 years, and that's not, that's kind of, it's almost perverse for anyone in our business to stay any one place that long. And it just, the time seemed right. I'm going to be able to spend a little more time on the books, and I'll probably still weigh in every now and then. I don't know. I think I felt good about the decision. I still do, although, of course, as soon as I retire, then you get Matt Gaetz to come along.
I was going to get to Matthew. I was wondering how long it was going to take Matt Gaetz to come up in this conversation. God. But you wish you had a platform when things like that happen.
There's so much that happens in Florida that you hate to be sitting on the sidelines, if you're in the opinion writing business. But some of it is so, inherently just funny and stupid as well. The guy's sending money on a Venmo account. He doesn't think to make it private. He wants a public Venmo account. This is like room temperature IQ stuff. So I'll miss that. I'll miss that as that story unfolds and the details come out. And they'll be sorted
Most of us who live in this state, and many who live outside this state, when there are certain things we see about Florida, things that happen, real stories that happen in Florida, and as you and I both know, because we've made our living on it, you can't really ever exceed Florida when you're trying to make up weird things. But the one that got me there, and I know that I'm not alone, many people, because I get emails about this all the time, say that's a Carl Hiaasen novel when they read, but the one that got me was he went to the Bahamas. This is all everything we say is allegedly, folks. We don't have any information. We're just 2 guys, but he went to the Bahamas with a guy who is a hand surgeon and marijuana entrepreneur. It's like Carl Hiaasen character.
But it's almost crushing in a way, because you're making it. Well, you know, when we make up characters for our novels, you think, okay, you try to push the limit. But the only one step further would have been a brain surgeon who's a marijuana.
Well, I thought about that. The reason I'm thinking hand surgeon is there's a point in the marijuana entrepreneur's life when he's going like, the hand is an important organ. If you're a marijuana entrepreneur, and a hand surgeon would be in perfect, you could spot at that moment, what was wrong with your technique, or maybe you could help you a little bit with that grip. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a carpal tunnel. They could probably go in and rearrange the carpal tunnel syndrome to just be holding a joint. But yeah, he went to the Bahamas on that. There's so many aspects of the story that are just funny. But this is when you have to sort of grind your teeth and, like I said, sit on the sidelines and up to a point. But the thing, you sort of had to draw a line in the sand and say, look, there's going to never be a really good time to do this, because there's always going to be something outrageous coming along to write about. But if you do the same thing, for as long as I did, and it was, I think you sometimes you got to step out of your comfort zone. So that's what I'm trying to do. And the books are plenty time consuming, and I can still have all the same anxiety and hostility that you've known for all these years. It's still there.
That's what I'm worried about, Carl. There's certain people. You're one. Ridley Pearson, another friend of mine, is one. I was like, with Ridley, I've always said, if Ridley can't write murder mysteries, there's a serious danger that he will murder someone. He will be, he's really good at figuring out how to do it. With you, I just think, like, if you can't, get out your angst about what's going on in Florida. So I'm guessing Matt Gaetz will appear in a Carl Hiaasen novel in some form one of these days.
Yeah, but how do you improve on him for fiction? As a caricature, or it was the same issue with Trump and Squeeze Me. How do you write somebody more outrageous than, and that's our job. And you're doing satire, you're trying to crank it up a notch. But when the real life events, when you have the President of the United States telling people, yeah, you might try injecting some bleach. And it's like we were living in a Saturday Night Live skit for 4 years.
I'm going to get to Squeeze Me in a minute, but I have one more retirement question, and it's important to me personally. Have you been practicing the guitar at all in your retirement?
I have not. I'm working up to that. I checked it the other day. The one I have in my office here, which is one that Warren Zevon left me. It's a beautiful Gibson, and apparently the strings don't sound the same after like a year or two just hanging on the wall.
Really? I thought they tuned those things at the factory and then you were done with it.
Once they're tuned, don't they stay tuned?
Fairly not. I need to tell our audience that Carl and I are we've played music together. Well, I won't call it music, but we have performed together on a few occasions. And the last time we performed, the band of authors, the Rock Bottom Remainders, and Carl sometimes joined us, and we played down here in Miami for the Miami Book Fair just before COVID hit, November of I guess 18. That would have been. Yeah. And we were so excited to have Carl join us that we formed a special sub band just for the occasion. And we had T-shirts made, and I just want to show them to the crowd in case those. I hope it shows up. Okay, Carl. Oh, it's showing up backwards, I fear.
No, it's right. It looks good. Oh, my
okay.
God.
On mine, it's backwards. Okay. My daughter Sophie had these made. Carl and the Catheters and we made these T-shirts, which I cannot imagine what the street value. I've got one of them. There's just a few left, and I'm very excited.
Mine's in a very special place, but I have.
But anyway, Carl and I together wrote a song for that performance. Based on a true story, which was, Carl, you want to tell them what the story was? Well, if you don't remember, I can.
They might remember that there was they stopped a couple who they suspected of smuggling reptiles and catching local reptiles in Florida and smuggling them. They stopped the car and they popped the trunk, and I think there was like 41 turtles that these people, little turtles like you have in your neighborhood, that they were stealing. And then I went back and reread the story, and I guess the game warden or the wildlife officer said, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? And the woman in the car reached down into her yoga pants and pulled out a live alligator. And so, you know, it was almost like, I mean, well, anyway, at least first of all, you can't even it's a vision I don't think you want to visualize it. I don't think that poor guy whoever stopped the car probably already retired. But
I feel bad for the alligator. I just want to get that out.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
There was an issue of that, I think. But in any case, I don't know that would ever happen. Even in a place that didn't have alligator, I don't think you'd find an iguana and anyone.
No, that's a Florida. You don't need to tell anybody what state the woman pulled an alligator out of her yoga pants on a traffic stop in. That's only going to be one state. Everyone in the world knows the state, and that's why we have some pride in Florida.
So Dave actually wrote the song.
We co-wrote the song, and I just want to quote some lyrics from it because Carl wrote my favorite single line. Anyway, the song is called "She Had Turtles in Her Trunk and a Reptile in Her Pants," and the chorus was "Don't hate her for the gator in her pants." And I mean, come on, it was country. It was a country western vibe, and I thought it was pretty good. But Carl wrote my favorite line: "Her boyfriend's bladder ceased to function somewhere west of Yeehaw Junction." He said, "Take a bow, Carl. Take a bow."
There you go.
I was like,
yeah,
that's Nashville quality, son.
That's like Woody Guthrie kind of stuff, right?
I think so. So anyway, all right. Now we got out. We're going to get to. I'm holding up and you're saying this comes out right on your screen. You can read
it comes out right
backwards on mine. Okay.
Wait, I got to hold Mitchell. Yeah, this is the paperback.
We're talking about the paperback. Okay.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
There it is. Squeeze me.
It looks.
Everyone should get this book. This book has, I mean, if you are a Carl Hiaasen fan, and who's not, this has pretty much everything. It's got snakes. It's got scumbags. It's got beloved characters from the past. I'm going to try not to reveal the plot because the plot's pretty exciting. But it's also got, the word scathing comes to mind. Scathing, two levels: scathing politically and scathing socially. And these two come together. So anyway, but a big part of the plot involves pythons. And like, I'm the kind of writer that if I use snakes, and I'll just look it up in Wikipedia and toss in and try to, a lot of authors are on my level. That's what they do. When Carl Hiaasen writes about snakes, folks, you're reading the words of not only an expert, but I almost hate to say a lover of, is it a species? What is it? Talk about you and snakes a little bit, Carl.
Well, when I started, when I was a kid, I grew up in West Broward when there was nothing in West Broward. Just really literally nothing. You rode your bike and were in the swamp right on the edge of the Everglades. So there wasn't a lot to do. So when we'd go fishing or whatever, camping out there, we'd always catch snakes. I mean, my mother had a pathological fear of snakes. I remember one time as a small kid, we lived on Holly Lane in Plantation, Florida. And she saw a snake in the backyard. And I remember we had one police officer, Officer Hank. That was the entire Plantation police.
Officer Hank?
Hank. And she called officer. She would see a snake and call Officer Hank, and he would come out. And if he found it, he would shoot it. Oftentimes he didn't find it. And I remember one time there was a water moccasin on our septic tank. And the question.
Oh, he shot your septic tank?
Well, you see a guy with a gun approaching your septic tank in the crouch position, it affects you. It affects you for years. So because my mother was so afraid, I think I developed sort of a natural curiosity. So I always had pet snakes, and kept them, and I've had them even when I moved down to the Keys in the mid '90s. I had a sort of a snake breeding operation going. Rat snakes, common rat snakes, which are harmless, not poisonous ones, but I always, where I live now, I catch them now and again in the yard and around, and And I don't see anything abnormal, but didn't have any python. Now the pythons are a whole new dimension. They brought a whole, because they get huge, they can eat a full-grown deer, and they ate their way through the Everglades, and now they're moving north. And so my thought was, that they will eventually get to the island of Palm Beach, where some presidents have their homes. They'll get there because they can swim, and it's perfect. There's a lot of habitat for them. So my thought was, they'll get there eventually. So I'm going to write this book for people who couldn't be there when it happens.
It's like a service to mankind.
That's how I thought.
For a lot of us, it's just going to be a dream, but
it's going to happen.
Oh yeah, well, I'm gonna move to that in a sec. But I will say I was on a book tour with Carl. Not a book tour, but we were at a book event in Palm Springs, I think it was.
Yeah.
And
I took you.
We had an afternoon free. There's lots of things you could do. You could golf. You could go hiking in the mountains. There's art. There's lots of stuff to do in Palm. Carl arranged for us to go and see a snake.
Well, they had a couple of snakes, but you would only hold the one.
I'm not holding any more snakes ever. Carl made me hold
a little red boa constrictor, I think. But then we went to the nature place. And they had the big Western Diamondbacks in there and everything.
Yeah.
I remember you wouldn't even get close to the tank.
Carl was sexually excited by the. I'm not.
And here's the tank, and those things are locked. Dave's about 10 feet away, going, "That's a rattlesnake. I recognize that."
I don't see the need to getting. I didn't go all the way to Palm Springs, California, where Cher and Sonny Bono lived, and Barbara and Barry Manilow lives there, and there's lots to do. But I don't know why we had to go see the snake. But anyway, my point is, I'm just verifying to those folks watching is that Carl is not, when he talks about snakes, it's because he knows about snakes. But anyway, all right. So the snakes get to Palm Beach in the book. Yeah. And again, we're going to try not to reveal key plot points. But my favorite part about this whole book is the way Carl dissects the Palm Beach social scene, which is, I don't want to give too much away, but it's brilliant and it's wonderful and it's lovely. And I just want to, two things, and you can elaborate how you got there. But Carl talks about the names of the people who live there, which they're not normal. Like one of the main characters, and this name I would kill to have made this up myself, is Faye Alex Riptoad, which is, I don't know. And when you get to meet her in the book, she's perfect for that. And they go to these social gatherings. They are always raising money they have so much money, and they basically go to balls and galas and raise money by giving a tiny bit of the money they have and getting treated like goddesses for it. One of them is a ball, the Ibis ball, which is to raise money for irritable bowel syndrome. Well, because they've sort of run out of.
There's so many competing disorders and diseases, and they got to get the ballrooms, reserved years in advance. So they've gone down. They're down to the third tier of afflictions in the benefits. So, yeah.
Then there's also the stars and SARS ball.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a scene where I'm going to read from it here. I apologize for the light and my reading glasses, but when he talks about where these people get their money,
oh god,
and he's talking about one of the balls, and the ladies, the socially prominent Palm Beach ladies gather, and they've arranged themselves around this table, and he says clockwise from Faye Alex, that's Faye Alex Riptoad. Sat D. Wyndham Whittlefield of the bauxite and lanolin Whittlefields, Kelly Bean Drummond of the processed soy Drummonds, and Dorothea Mars Bristol of the aerospace Bristols, defiantly unrelated to the denture paste Bristols. On Faye Alex's right was Deirdre Combo Lancombe of the Dolomite Cobos and Windstorm Insurance Lanscombs, Yerma Sky Frick, the Sky with two Y's, Frick of the personal lubricant Fricks, and gloomily anyway. So I laughed so hard when I read that, and I wanted you to tell me how you researched and how you got to this view of Palm Beach, because it's just wonderful.
Well, as you probably have guessed, I don't get invited to a lot of these functions, but I have been to a few. But what I started doing was reading, the shiny sheet, which is what they call, like, it's the Palm Beach Daily News, which covers basically almost exclusively the society world of Palm Beach, and it's seasonal. It starts in the wintertime, and it covers all.
Can you explain real briefly for those of us who don't know why it's called the shiny sheet?
Because the physical paper, if I'm not mistaken, is different from regular newsprint. It's almost shiny like a magazine. It was glossy
because
I guess they didn't want to get the newsprint
on their white. They didn't want to get their white gloves back in the day.
Yeah,
they didn't want to get ink on them. Anyway, that's what I always heard.
That makes perfect sense. So there, it's almost like getting a magazine, but that's the publication that publishes all the photos that you see of society events where the couples are posing, everybody's posing, but it charts sort of the events that are going on, and then the pictures always have the captions of who they are, and I have to say, and I don't know why, but most of I hate the term society matrons, but that hardcore, the old money, they always had three names. It was never just like Suzanne Jones. It was like Suzanne, Vanderbilt, Hathaway, Jones. They had everything, and I know just from talking to people. I mean, a lot of the identity comes from where back east money. What did their grandfathers do? That was a railroad family, or that was a coal mining family, or and future generations are going to be different because now it'll be IT money that they'll identify themselves as. That's the GoDaddy Simmons over there. That's from the GoDaddy portion. But so it was just intriguing, and also it was also a time warp sort of sense about this, that they're still doing that. They raise a ton of money and they do it for good causes. Let me say that. But the balls themselves are extraordinarily expensive, and they usually bring in first-rate talent. I mean, they'll try to bring in, somebody like Billy Joel to play the piano. I mean, they're spending what they're spending to raise this is sometimes questionable. But anyway, it would just seem like the perfect place for a big ass python to show up. I don't know.
And show up, it does in a dramatic fashion that we're not going to go into because we're not going to reveal too much. I just want to say, as you have, I'm sure, have been asked to participate in various charity events over the years. And I remember one in Miami, and I don't remember what the disease was, but it was very lavish the way they can be. Not Miami is different from Palm Beach. It was kind of more ostentatious, showy, but it was very, very expensive. Everything was the entertainer was, as I recall, Dionne Warwick, and it was like everything is expensive. And I remember talking to the organizers at some point, saying, I know it's a good cause, but it's like $5,000 a ticket or whatever, but you are spending all this money, and there's an orchestra. Are you actually making any money on this for this, the disease? And they said to me, "You see that lady over there?" And there was a lady sitting at a table right in the middle, little old lady. And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "At the end of tonight, we're going to give her a plaque, and she's going to give us a check for $15 million. And that is the whole point of this evening tonight. It has got nothing to do with all other stuff." But
all right.
But I guess what I'm saying is the whole world of charity is, and you're right, they do good, they raise money for good causes, but a lot of it is about ego, and a lot of it is about, and there's a lot of insecurity in that world, which you talk about, the hierarchy,
the competitiveness about whose party is the party, and it goes on in New York City, of course, a lot too.
10 times whatever we have.
Yeah. But at some point you have to step back from the sort of the pageantry and say, really, couldn't we have to get the tuxedo and the drive? Couldn't we just write a check? Well,
and the answer is no, because that would not feed the egos the way they want to, they need to be fed, it would not establish. But anyway, okay. So the Pythons come to Palm Beach and there are these society balls going on, and this book just wonderfully dissects that world. But the other thing you talk about is a political world, which is you are equally scathing about. A key character lives in a place we call in the book Casa Bellicosa, and he is a very large, very corpulent man, who's president of the United States.
Yep.
With a hot wife with whom he does not seem to have a particularly close relationship. Some people felt when they read that, Carl, that it was based on reality. You were like, is there any truth to that? There was like an actual physical person that you were making fun of in that.
Well, the people tell me there's a resemblance between, but that's, about this from fiction. People are always seeing just because he's a big giant guy who tans himself into a state like a pumpkin, and and has a mansion on Palm Beach, but I will, again, not wanting to give too much away, but this week you and I have talked about this so many times, trying to stay ahead of the headlines now in this day and time we live. If you write humor, it's so hard to stay ahead of reality and have that edge. And this week there's this new book on the Secret Service coming on. There's a Secret Service agent in the book who gets involved with a family member of the first family, and I had made completely, of course, made that up. But this book is coming out, and it's now apparently Don Jr.'s wife and also daughter Tiffany Trump both became extremely close with one of their Secret Service agents, so much so that one of them had to be reassigned. Not the daughter, the agent had to be reassigned. But I saw that and I thought, you can't. How do you stay ahead? Because you think that's probably going on. Then you find out, oh, it's not just going on. It's like a thing. And I mean, in the novel, for instance, the figure of the president, who's you just know as Mastodon. His Secret Service nickname is Mastodon. And I make reference to a lot of scandals that were different from the scandals that afflicted the past president, but they had some tonal similarity. But I make reference into that in I say the two failed impeachment trials, and I wrote that
when there was only been one.
Only one. It was just a wild guess. Probably going to happen to them again, and it did.
And they both failed. Okay. This is a writer question.
Okay.
In this book, the protagonist, an English major, so I can use that term, is a woman.
Yeah.
And in many of your books, that is the case. Why is that? Why do you do that? You like to do that? Why?
Well, in this book, I wrote about 5 chapters where the main character, the protagonist, is one of these wildlife relocation people. For all of us in Florida, you see these trucks around. If you got, if there's a raccoon in your piano, you call up somebody and they come remove them humanely and move them somewhere else. So that was the job I wanted for my protagonist, and I wrote it with a guy. It was a male character, and I got about 5 chapters in, and I just thought, God, this would be so much more fun. It is kind of a male-dominated profession, and there's no reason for that. Anybody can wrangle, a bobcat. That's nothing. I mean, if you're in that line of work, it's nothing. It's not, you and I wouldn't do it, but I'm just saying.
I can't wrangle a bobcat, Carl.
Well, that's the kind of thing. So I thought it'd be much more fun with the female lead. That's when I came up with Angie. And I just like them. I think it sort of reflects my real life experiences that women are always a couple moves ahead of the guys. Always. We are really simple organisms. Men are, and it's just more interesting to me. They're more fun. Plot wise, there were things that were going to make it work better for me than if it was just a guy doing that job. So, but yeah, I've always, and I get attached to them, I have to say, and I think I'm probably happier writing those when they're on the page. I think I feel better about some of the scenarios, the humor, everything. But in this case, it was a conscious decision because I'd started one way and I thought, God, I think I can get more out of this.
Well, I thought it was a good decision. I've always liked your female characters. So
yeah.
One of the things I have not read that is in the paperback is the epilogue. And I don't want you to tell me what's in it because I haven't read it yet. But I would like to talk about why you included an epilogue.
I've never done this before, but the book was out, the hardback was out late last summer, and usually I'm done. But then the events following the election and then up into and including January 6th were so outrageous. I mean, they were harrowing, but they were also so profoundly stupid in their own way that I felt they deserved some satiric attention. And I felt like it was worth going back and revisiting a couple months down the road, the emperor in exile, as it were, and some of the other characters. So it's just an added chapter, but it was one of the rare times when I thought, God, you know, I'm not quite done. And so that's why I wanted to do it.
So it's not you commenting on it's actually a continuation of the.
No, you pick up with the characters and sort of there's a little bit of a gloomy mood at Casa Bellicosa a few months later. And the president is trying to restart his failed businesses, and these people are coming and making him, business pitches and endorsement pitches. And so the only people he's really seeing are people that are coming to give him some money to try to endorse certain products and things. But there you see some of the other characters as well.
Oh, I can't wait to read. Well, and we can't. I mean, again, we're not going to say that Trump is the basis for Mastodon because, as you say, it's a work of fiction. But he is getting ready to go out on tour again. I understand.
Is he? What's the tour going to be?
I think it's going to be let's pay more attention to me because I haven't been out there a lot, and I'm not on Twitter anymore. I think that's the theme of it.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
I mean, I don't think it's spelled out in that explicitly, but that seems like what it's about. So anyway, can we talk a little bit about Florida? You are this book, like all your books, set in Florida. You are the kind of the guy that Eminence agrees of, spokesperson for the health of the state of Florida. And you and I were talking with Mitchell Kaplan about this before we started this. There's all these people moving here now. I mean, we've always had people moving here, but we have a ton of people moving here now. All the property values are going up. And these are mostly from New York, but also apparently tech bros from Silicon Valley. A lot of people, and they're attracted by a number of things. One of them, big one being no state income tax. Yeah. None of these people, as far as I know, have experienced a hurricane season. Really, even a summer.
Yeah, even a stroll in the park and on middle of July. They haven't even exposed it. There was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal, and I think it was about a month ago, that said, everyone's hyping the fact that all these people are moving out of Florida, moving into Florida. That it's all the big real estate hype. Everybody's coming here, but they looked at the numbers, and it almost evened out exactly to the number of people leaving Florida, residents leaving. In other words, there were people that had come down here and apparently had experienced the last couple hurricane seasons in the summer.
And they're out of here.
They're out of here, and so the net population gain it is increasing, but it's not nearly what you think it was because people are bailing, and there was all about the numbers being used to say, hey, look at how great we're doing. And a lot of the people are coming here now are at least my experience in where I live are there's a lot of people who have second homes here already, and kind of wealthy people. Now they're kind of, okay, we're hunkering down. We're not paying taxes in New York or Connecticut or California anymore. We're coming here. They got these great plans, but they're going to need to hang on to that place up north because they're going to need a place to go, when the tropical cyclone season begins just next month. So
you think the boom may not be permanent, may not be?
I think it's a couple. I think it'll last probably maybe a couple of years, but I think at some point a lot of people are going to rethink that decision because this is, where I live up in Vero Beach. It used to be after Easter, everything went dead. Everybody left. Everybody went back north. Things quieted down, and this year it hasn't been. Everyone said Mother's Day, it's going to happen, and the weather's been fairly mild. It hasn't been that blazing hot. So Mother's Day comes and goes, and the streets are still packed with people. And now finally, as we've had a couple 90-degree days, and crowds are thinning out, but you couple that with the anxiety that all longtime Floridians know with hurricane season, where you are forced to watch more than 5 minutes of the Weather Channel at one sitting, it becomes like one of your regulars on your dial. Okay, where is it now? That it takes a toll. And
they haven't been through that yet. I'm wondering how they're going to handle that, and going to Publix and buying lentils that they will never actually use, I'm going to be curious to see how the tech bros handle that.
Yeah, that's right. No, I've still got jugs of water that I bought for like literally a hurricane that was coming in 2006 or something. Some extra.
Well, hang on to those, Carl, because they could be.
They're just getting right. They're just the vintage. It's just.
What about bleach? Do you have plenty of bleach, Carl? Don't inject it
in case the virus comes back. I do.
That's right. All right, I'm going to invite Mitchell Kaplan now to join us because my next question was going to be about the newspaper business, and we always get very grim when we talk about that. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Mitchell Kaplan. He runs the best bookstore in the United States, maybe the world. You can order your books from them. You can donate to them. He is the heart and soul of the Miami literary community, and we love him.
Well, I want to thank you guys. These are two of my favorites. I think they put my kids through preschool with the sale of all their books. It was great. I could listen to you guys all day, but I have to tell you something very funny. Rochelle's, my wife's, been listening in the other room, and all this talk about the hurricanes, she whispered in my ear and said, I hope my clients from California who are about to buy a condo are not listening. So for all the realtors out there, everybody.
Yeah, there's no hurricane. There's no hurricanes, really.
It's all
that's a thing of the past.
Yeah, it's all part of the deep state invented.
Well, it's funny that you were going to talk about newspapering because it's something that I wanted to hear you guys talk about as well. So, we've seen such a shift going on over the last 5 years in newspapering. Tell us from where you both are inside of it. Where do you sit? What does the future look like?
Bleak. It's very, very bleak.
Yeah.
And I keep looking for some sign, some reason to feel hope, but I can find none aside from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, mostly because of wealthy ownership, or in the case of the Wall Street Journal, because of a niche part of the market. There's the financial model that ran newspapers for a long time, and was when Carl and I were young, and they were rolling in dough. It's all gone. Nobody has come up with a way to replace it. People don't want to pay for their newspaper subscriptions. Older people will buy a newspaper if they get a physical product. Nobody wants to pay for it online, and it's been absolutely brutal. And anybody who tells you it isn't is basically dreaming. But most newspapers, including the Miami Herald, have had to cut staff drastically. Nobody has figured out how to get money to increase it. And the future, that's the worst part of what I'm saying. And I know this is a grim thing I'm saying, but there's no hope ahead. It's like people, the numbers keep going down as older folks my age, die off, and nobody comes along to replace them as readers. So it's really brutal. And now I'm going to go shoot some heroin. No, Carl, do you have anything to add to that?
I
Grim.
agree completely. And one of the things that it's so upsetting and so worrisome is it's the loss of local journalism. You're always going to have a national media. You can always find out, what happened in the Gaza tonight. That's not a hard thing. The harder thing is to find out what your city council did last night at 1 a.m. on the last item on the agenda to change, to make a change that all of a sudden, and then you're going to have a Walmart at the end of your street, and you're not going to know where it came from or how it got there because there was no reporter there to cover it. That's where it's going to hurt. And people do read local news, and they read local sports, and they read, and when a fire truck goes by their house, they want to go somewhere and find out. And you may or may not get the right information on Facebook. You may get the fact that there's a 5-alarm fire 5 blocks away, or you may also get a UFO just landed, and L. Ron Hubbard just got off. You may get that. You may get that shit too. And the frightening thing is how many people have preferred getting up passively, and that way being told. They just go to someplace they want to hear it, and they say everything's going to be fine, and then they're shocked when they get up and it isn't fine. But that's the local sort of the essence of local journalism is to cover your neighborhood, and that's not going to be happening.
Well, that begs the next question. So, the newspaper as we know it is unraveling. What about journalism itself? Is it a question of that there isn't a platform that people can access? Are there
Tragically, no, that's not the problem. Is there is a platform everybody can access, and journalists are addicted to it, and it's called Twitter, and that's the problem. We are partly at fault. Journalism people are partly at fault for what is happening, which is people are getting who used to be responsible to a newspaper. When they wrote something, the newspaper's name was behind it,
right?
And there were layers of editors to vet it. Now there isn't, those layers don't exist anymore because of staffing cuts, but also the newspapers just want you to get out there, get your name. And so more and more, it's like, it's happened a lot in sports journalism, especially. People get their own individual brands. I'm not a reporter really, I'm a commentator, and this is what I think. And my Twitter feed, I have 117,000 followers.
It's about the click, right?
It's about
exactly.
Yep. It's all about the click, and that will be the end of serious journalism right there.
Yeah, it's hurting it badly. And there are still great journalists. And don't get me wrong,
yeah.
Right here at the Miami Herald, we have terrific people, really good people. I just fear that the forces against their, continuing and being hired are greater than the forces that's going to recruit new ones, And
a lot of the companies that are buying up newspapers that are struggling, which is a lot of newspapers, a lot of those companies that are buying them up, either hedge funds or capital, venture capitalists or something. I mean, they're being run by people that have never worked in journalism and in many cases don't really read newspapers at all. They're just how do we cut costs and monetize what we have for an online presence? And so Dave and I have talked about this. If it's all about the clicks, then we should all be writing about the Kardashians. Just every day, make up something new about the Kardashians, and you're going to get more clicks than you are on the violence in the Mideast. That's the sad fact. But that's been true not just for our generation, but going all the way back. People, the escape value of celebrities and scandals and J-Lo and Ben Affleck or whatever is always going to draw you away from a gruesome, heart-wrenching story that's unfolding on the borders of this country, for example. They'd rather just be told by Fox News that it's all Joe Biden's fault. And then that they're fine. We're getting, the hordes are coming, the brown hordes are coming, and it's all Joe Biden's fault. And they go back, and then they go back to Cracker Barrel and talk about it with their friends.
Yeah. So it's the whole idea of a shared truth in a sense. Even though those truths change, and we can all argue about them, we're all in our own silos. It seems like. Over and over again, just listening to the same kind of stuff. It's very troubling, but I guess it's the stuff, both of you I know well, and I know that, you're able to turn all of this around into satire, into, sort of black humor and all that. But I know at root, there's something very serious that you're dealing with, and something serious, as much as you don't like to admit it. So I want to kind of turn it around a little bit. And I want to ask you both, what makes you most hopeful going forward when you look at what's happening? I know there's so much bad stuff happening, but what makes you hopeful? Is there something about a younger generation? You both have kids, college age and just beyond. What do you look for that can give us a ray of hope, do you think?
Well, I am hopeful. I'm not sure what solution they'll come up with. I'm just hoping they're smarter than I am, because I am big, but I used to be, when my kids were little, pretty contemptuous of young adults. Now that my kids are young adults, or my son's case, he's 40 now and he has 2 kids of his own. They're good people. Their friends are good people. They work hard. They have good values. Their approach to media and especially social media, very different from mine, but I trust them, and I feel very hopeful. I guess my pessimism comes from not knowing what solution they'll come up with.
Yeah.
But I do believe that they are going to work at it, that they understand what the problems are and are better equipped than I am to solve those problems. So I do feel hopeful about. I don't think that kids are any worse. Kids now are any worse than kids when I was a kid. I was a child of the 60s, and we were all like dope smoking hippie jerk kids. I was like, and we turned out great. so I'm not. I do feel hopeful about future generations.
I mean, one of the smart moves that I did wasn't even my idea when I started writing these books for young readers, and I started getting letters, and I get tons of letters from kids who read, who are, and even younger than they talk about, middle school, even high school kids who read, and they're smart and they're funny, and Dave and I've talked about this. They have this amazing clarity about what's right and what's wrong. And I don't know where that gets beaten out of us in our education system or in our political world, but they know when they see something if it's right or wrong. And they're idealistic, and they'll learn some hard lessons. But when I read these letters and I think, this is okay, we're turning this planet over to them. And they're obviously way smarter and sharper than I was at that age. And they're more interested, at least the ones that are writing, are more interested in plugged in. And also, there's a whole group of them that don't stare at their cell phone all day. Or if they do, they still manage to read books, and they still manage to stay up on the news. So I think for us to just even have a sane existence, we have to invest some hope and the idea that these are not dummies. These are smart kids, and they've already been through more in their lifetimes with the pandemic than probably Dave and I in our childhoods. I mean, every generation has. We had Vietnam, we had Watergate, we had the assassinations of and there was idealism that was shattered all the way along the way. And I'm sure that the new generation is going to have some idealism shattered. But when you see the raw letters and you think, God, there's some good people and there's some smart people. It's these smart kids, and they're going to handle us better than our generation.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because the thing that brings me so much hope is watching these young kids when both of you are presenting to them. Each of you have written books for young kids. Well, young adults. It's just so heartening to see their excitement and how much they respond to both of you. And that makes me hopeful. And to watch kids come in the bookshop, and I'm feeling good about this next generation and what it'll bring. We've left them a pretty rough road. But I'm very hopeful.
Pile is what we've left them.
What's that? What?
Steaming pile is what we've left.
It's true.
Yeah.
All right. Here's someone on the questions is saying, and you guys will both like this in a sense. This has nothing to do with this evening's chat, and I apologize. After all these years, I'm still upset with the Miami Herald for eliminating Tropic magazine. Right? That was one of the, we all loved and remembered. That goes to what you're talking about.
Tropic magazine was a unicorn. It was an absolute miracle that it existed at all and that it lasted as long as it did. Again, this is what we were talking about earlier, that Miami Herald was making so much money, as were almost all big city newspapers. And they turned Tropic magazine over to basically kind of like Animal House. I mean, maybe a smarter version, but there's a series of editors at that magazine who all were just like, let's try this. And they would try anything and hire, anybody who was willing to try stuff. And we just did wild things at Tropic magazine that now some of which we should never have done. And
that's where Dave and I really got to know each other. I had gone from the City Desk staff to the staff of Tropic, and Dave was writing his column. And then I was there for a while, and then I went back to the newsroom. But it wasn't. You walk back in that place, it was so unlike the newsroom. And can I tell a quick story about the time? I forget whether it was Weingarten or Doug Balls or somebody, one of the editors, thought it'd be a great idea to have Harry Cruz. It would be a great now to have Harry Cruz could do a story for Tropic.
Oh my God!
Harry Cruz wandered in, and he lived rough and hard, and
he certainly did.
He had been at a tavern downtown before he got to the paper, and I remember going up to the newsroom, and Doug everybody's intimidated. He was a great novelist, but he said, "Well, yeah, I'll write something for you, but you could pay me now." They're literally scurrying around the newsroom trying to whatever it was they're going to pay him $500 or $600 in cash.
That was gone.
That's really funny.
Tropic paid for a lot of stories.
At the very first Miami Book Fair, Harry Cruz was teaching at Gainesville, University of Florida.
Yeah.
We had him confirmed for the very first Miami Book Fair. At 3 a.m, I get a phone call. Harry Cruz will not be coming to the Miami Book Fair. Apparently, he got drunk and he ended up in the drunk tank somewhere in Gainesville, and he wasn't able to make it the next day. But boy, he was a hard-living guy. Really interesting.
It was a great idea that, hey, we need money to pay Harry Cruz. Anybody got money?
Give him money. That's a big mistake. One of the editors during our tenure was Gene Weingarten,
right?
And Gene Weingarten. Like all department heads at the Herald, they used to get regular notices, about meetings of editors. And Gene never read his mail, so he didn't know that. Anyway, one of the memos that went around to all the editors was that a group of Knight Ridder, we were owned by Knight Ridder at the time, and Knight Ridder stock was publicly held, and so they used to periodically bring in stock analysts, and our job. The job of the Herald executives was to convince them that we were worth, the money. And Knight Ridder headquarters was right on top of the Herald. So they said, we're going to bring a group of stock analysts around every department just to show them how the newspaper works. So be ready on this date at this time for your department to give a 10-minute presentation on what your department is doing. Gene had never read this. So we're all standing around the Tropic office. Carl, I'm sure remembers, is like just random people with there was a big table in the middle where people tend to sit. Sometimes we played ping pong on it, and sometimes we sat around it and talked. And sometimes people slept on it, but it was just a big table in the middle of the room. In comes this group of serious looking, all men in suits with the editor. And he said, to Gene Weingarten, Gene, are you ready for your presentation? And Gene had no idea. He said, Gene, you're supposed to give him a presentation. So we're all watching it. And Gene says, okay. And we were doing a cover story about a guy who was a hurricane tracker. And the cover picture, the photo was going to be, they're going to hang him from a bar. And then they were going to run it sideways. It was going to look like he was blowing off. So the wind was blowing so hard and we actually ran this cover, and they had a fan blowing down, so it looked like he was blowing, but it was going to be sideways. And they were in the process of getting that cover together. They had taken the picture of him hanging. And Gene decides to tell him about that. And he says to Philip Brooker, who was our art director, okay, these very much serious men waiting for this. And Gene is trying to explain. He goes, and he can't figure out a good way to explain it. So he just wants to show him the picture. He says, Philip, can we see the picture of the guy getting blown? And so it's dead silence. And we're like, okay. And Gene starts to laugh. We all laugh a little bit, but Gene laughed hard. This is like the funniest thing he'd ever said. So, okay, there's like an awkward 30 seconds while Gene is like kind of laughing so hard he can't really stand up straight. And then okay, we're over this now, and we're going to get back to the serious men. And Gene gets up, looks at him again, and is once again struck by how funny this is, and just doubles over laughing again. So now it's really awkward. And the men are just standing there, and Gene is laughing. He's pounding the table. He comes up again for air and sees them again and goes down again. And then when he came up the third time, they were gone. And that was the presentation of Tropic Max. But that kind of summed it up. And the readers loved it, and the writers loved it, and they ran so much great stuff and some crazy stuff, but that could never happen. Happen again.
One of the highlights of my book selling career is to see all of you in the middle of Lincoln Road in the early 90s.
Naked Came the Manatee
with a book signing. This was the largest book signing we ever did. And we had to hold up the line because I think one of the authors had to breastfeed her baby.
That's right.
So the line had to be held up. So
that was a Tropic special. We decided to write a novel. Everybody write a chapter. I wrote the first chapter. Carl wrote the last chapter, which is God knows how he did. And Elmore Leonard wrote the second to the last chapter. In between, we had pretty much every major South Florida author wrote a chapter of that book. And Carl and I, God, that was the best book tour I ever went on.
Me and Dave and Elmore Leonard went on a book tour. You can imagine. And here's the best part. Elmore Leonard had never read the book. He had never read the book. And we were on the Today Show or on Charlie Rose. And every time they throw a question at poor Dutch Leonard, he'd look at me, he'd look at Dave. And we finally, on the air, you or me busted him, said, just tell everybody right now, you never read this book. You just wrote the chapter.
Yeah, so that was serialized in Tropic and actually got published as a book.
Yeah.
And it actually did well. The book did
very well. And if you have a signed copy by all the authors, happens to be very collectible these days as well.
Well, because half of them are dead now, I think.
I hope not. I hope not.
But anyway, some of us are.
Now, music, I want to make a quick turn. Music is something you guys love, both of you. I know it. The Rock Bottom Remainders is a staple at the Miami Book Fair. We love that. I got to meet Roger McGuinn through you guys. You played with Springsteen. You played with Warren Zevon. I've seen you in all kinds of different venues. So today, who are you guys listening to? What music do you guys like? Doesn't have to be anyone new, but what's still percolating? What music recommendations can you give the audience out there?
I'm gonna stick with. Oh, go ahead.
I don't listen to anything new, but I was listening to a song today by a group called the Bottle Rockets. I just like the name Bottle Rockets.
That sounds pretty hip, Carl.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a radar gun. It's been out a few years, but because of my own traffic, I've had some familiarity with radar guns. So,
Carl's a fast driver. I'm going to say this right now.
But that's, I'm so narrow-minded when it comes to me. I just.
Who are the old guys the old standards that you go to? Is it Warren?
I still listen to Stones, Springsteen, The Who I got to see in concert when they were all alive. I'm never climbing out of that time warp, sadly.
I don't think it's
Tom Petty.
Dave listens to a lot more. Dave, because he's an actual musician, I actually appreciate it.
Lately, I'm on a Tom Petty kick. Speaking of Florida dudes, but Tom Petty was a genius, and
I think he's one of the most underrated songwriters.
I agree. Great.
I listen to his stuff. I listen to Tom Petty radio on Sirius.
Yeah, it's great.
And
many songs.
I got to see. I went to one of his last show, one of the last Florida show he did before that year he passed away. I went to see him, and he was just, his writing is really good. Yeah.
Well, the Traveling Wilburys, the stuff.
Oh God, I love them.
I mean, that stuff is really great. And I've started. I don't know if you guys like John Prine at all, but I find I can't get enough of John Prine often.
So we like dead guys, is what we're saying.
Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, it's true. We get to the age where they, but music is,
musicians like Carl, that Warren Zevon and Roger McGuinn both ended up playing with the Remainders, Warren for years and Roger still, because they were fans of Carl Hiaasen.
And I had this great scene a couple of years ago. David Crosby was in town to do something, and he stayed at my house. And he went out and he lounged by the pool, and David Crosby in his boxer shorts lying on the pool.
It was like having a walrus right at your pool.
No,
right?
yeah, he was just so chill, and there may have been. There was some kind of smoke in the air. I'm not sure what it was. But it was just like, but I thought, well, this is pretty good. If I did nothing else with my writing career, I got Crosby over at the house. Fired one up, and he's just lounging by. The dog's over there licking his face, trying to wake him.
Well, also Jimmy Buffett loves Carl. He's never played with the Remainders, but Jimmy and Carl.
I saw him last night in Delray. That was a great show. He's going back on the road. So yeah,
well, I am hoping that you got. We're hoping to do a physical book fair this year.
I hope so.
And
Absolutely.
I really, really hope you guys can come. There are just two questions before we'll call it a night. And one, Carl, someone's asking, and I know what my answer would be as a bookseller, but they're saying, is there any way for anyone to see the epilogue who already bought the hardcover without buying a paperback? And my answer would obviously be no.
Buy the paperback.
Buy the paperback.
Yes.
And give it away to somebody.
And I don't know, and I felt bad about that. They do. I know they've added it to the audio book, but there was nothing they could do except Xerox copies and then mail them to everybody who bought it.
But I'm sure there'll be people hanging out in the store reading the epilogue.
Yeah, no, I mean,
we're not going to bother you if you do that.
I wish there was something, but I don't think there is, and I think they want to sell the paperbacks now. Mitch might want to sell those paperbacks.
Well, just a couple. A couple. Someone is asking about what Skink would make of the new governor that we have.
I can't. This is where the head will start to fill up. I don't know. I can't get inside his head. I think he would be probably horrified by a lot of it. The dictatorial nature would offend him, and I don't know what his reaction would be. But we've had other. Rick Scott was probably would have put him in orbit as well. I mean, I can't. It's interesting. I don't think about that character Skink so much except when I feel like there's a moment in a novel to bring him out. Because if I got inside his head, I'd end up where he is, out in the middle of the swamp eating roadkill. That's
Carl. He came from your head, Carl. Skink came from your head.
I know, but
that makes us nervous.
I don't want to get inside my own. People say, my therapist will say, well, let's explore that. And I'll say, no, that's why I'm here. To try to avoid exploring. I don't want to know what's going on up there.
So, Carl, what's next for you?
I'm working on another novel for young readers, for kids. Yeah. Cool. And I'm at the stage, you know how superstitious. I don't ever talk.
No, I'm not going to ask you about it.
It has chapters.
That's good. That's a start.
Well, Dave taught me. He said you need chapters, right?
Rectangular pages, sequentially numbered. Yeah, that's the way I go.
So that's what I'm working on now, and just trying to figure out what a plot. That'll come about the last thing that occurs to me is the plot.
And you, Dave, what's up? What's next for you?
I'm working on a novel also. Mine's an adult novel, and it's set in South Florida. Weirdly enough, but about 30,000 words into it. In fact, it's interesting. I talked to Carl at the beginning of it because originally the idea, I was going to call it the Python Challenge because I always was fascinated by it. But I thought, you know what? I know Carl's writing a book and I want to check first. So I said, Carl, does your new book have Python in it? Because quite a bit. So I threw away my original idea altogether, and it is now still set in the Everglades, but it only has one Python in it.
And that's like hurricanes. All you need is one.
All you need is one. Yeah.
You need one.
Carl, you think you'll be writing any nonfiction now that you're not at the paper? Like
I think it's possible. Not as books, but I can do. I could do columns if I wanted to here and there. I think I probably will again for sure. It's just not. People ask about nonfiction books, and right now I'm one of these people who do one thing at a time, and that's the kids' book, and then we'll see. And I can barely do one thing at a time. So.
Well, I am so glad both of you guys did this tonight. And I really wish we could just all go out and have a drink, all talk afterwards. That'll happen soon enough, I hope. But
that's what we usually do.
Yeah, it's what we usually do. I love both of you. Love you guys. Glad to see that you're both well and good and healthy and writing, and you're going to bring so much good stuff to all of us. So thank you.
I got to thank Dave for doing this because he's done several for me. I owe him big time. And I mean,
Carl, this is more fun for me. It's really more fun for me than anything else I do.
Here's what I'm going to make a pledge to you that if there is going to be a book fair, I will start practicing again.
All right.
Maybe about a month out. If you'll set. Oh, geez. No, we got it.
Dave, someone's asking, where do we get those T-shirts?
Oh, dear God.
Are they
you can't.
Anywhere?
We just made a limited number, and they were gone like within seconds. As soon as the band saw them, everybody wanted one. I didn't order enough. But I should, because that's Carl and the Catheters. Come on. That's that was the golden age of music.
It was something golden.
All right, guys, we're ready. Christina, we're ready to fade away. But thank you both. Thanks everybody out there for coming. Click below. You can buy books, and we thank you. And everybody be safe.